schedule that and bring us back together with the board. Because while this is the most urgent of all of our boards, we have the problem that Roy just described with a lot of our boards.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's where, just to bring it full circle, that's where I think having really good onboarding education and also staff support, and you know what I mean, to help, I think is key to a big part of our boards and commissions. I know from being on one and from being a liaison to one. Okay, so it sounds like going forward, scheduling the onboarding for our existing, current, new, all members. And then also for us to look at a time. I like Pat's idea of coming together. I think it'd probably be useful if there were different things that we should look at. So like I'll look at that February meet, 21, what does that look like and what was the conversation? Some of those things I think could be useful if we have to share with one another, just so we can go into this conversation even more informed.
And if you haven't read the documents that December Harmon has prepared, we should read them. And if you have, read them again, because that represents an enormous amount of work on her part. And the fact that she identified an outside speaker and had that speaker zoom into a meeting is just extraordinary, that a member of a board or commission would spend that much time working on it.
All right, so we are now, directions given. I think you feel like somewhat guidance a little bit, Nancy, on the couple of those things. We're now at 6:57.
Basic onboarding, not this kind of exploration of what that next model might be.
Right. That's going to be more of a conversation with council.
Yeah.
Functional.
Be functional.
Yes.
Focused on their work.
All right, I'm going to adjourn us since we have 3 minutes to start our next meeting in the next room.
Oh boy. That's unusual for me. I don't get it.
Call us to order, yeah?
I laid down, take a nap, thinking that would work. I woke up my neck and my head.
Wait for him to come back in. I imagine he's just in the bathroom.
I have something I don't really want to share.
I'm just giving Roy a couple minutes.
Had it a while ago, so
Yeah.
say it again.
He didn't say anything to me. Okay.
But I also had a bad cold.
Go ahead and call our Monday, November 21st, 2022 Columbia City Council meeting to order. I invite all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sheila, will you please call roll?
Miss Buffalo,
Here.
Miss Fowler,
Here.
Miss Weiner,
Here.
Mr. Lovelady,
Here.
Mr. Foster,
Here.
Mr. Pitzer,
Here.
Miss Peters.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of you to our second meeting in November. It's nice to see such a large crowd. I hope you all stay till the very end. There's multiple opportunities to speak before council. You can talk during old business, new business, under our public hearing section, as well as at the end of the meeting. We ask when you speak during the public hearings, old business and new business, that you refer your comments to the item that we are discussing that night. General comments at the end are when you can talk about anything you want to talk about. You'll be given 3 minutes as an individual and 5 minutes if representing an organization affected by the item. We ask that you respect the time limits. There will be a little red light that will come on here and a countdown clock in front. We ask that you respect so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. There is always opportunity for disagreement. Like with anything else, we encourage everybody to remember to treat one another with respect. We ask that you not applaud, boo, snap, or any other demonstrative action that could intimidate someone else from speaking. That is obviously except for when we're congratulating our Citizen Academy graduates today, of which you can clap. And then just reminder, we can disagree on issues and topics, but please treat one another with respect because we're all neighbors. So going forward with our council meeting agenda today, we are discussing changes to our minutes, and so we have none to approve this evening, but council will be discussing that in a future one. Moving on to approval or adjustment of our agenda, including the consent agenda. I'll just make one note. I know that Matt Pitzer plans to abstain from the appointment of the Airport Advisory Board member. So I make a motion to allow him to abstain from that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded from Andrea. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Is there any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I motion to approve the agenda as amended, if that was called an amendment. I don't know. Yeah. I'm going to say motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded from Andrea. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. The agenda is approved. Now, up first, we have our special item. This is the recognition of our first Civic Academy graduates. So 6 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of joining the group as they started on this very first Civic Academy. The goal of this program is to educate, empower, and engage our residents. And over the last 6 weeks, I like to think that it did, since you're all here. These folks now have a better understanding of our form of government and the role of elected officials. They learned about our community's commitment to climate action laid out in our Climate Action Adaptation Plan, as well as our plans and goals for the future laid out in our strategic plan.
They found out about how the police, fire, and public health services keep our community safe and healthy. They discovered all the divisions that make up public works and community development departments, and had the opportunity to discuss operations with leadership. They toured the new airport terminal, I think before I did, the wastewater treatment plant, and the Hyndman Gardens at Stevens Lake Park. So throughout the course of these 6 weeks, this group showed up again and again to learn more about our city and what we in the council do and what our city staff does. So it was the 3 hours on a Thursday evening, and I like to think that that is worth celebrating and recognizing. So please join me in recognizing these 17 individuals who are educated, empowered, and engaged in our community, and thanking them for investing their time in our community. It's my hope and experience that it was eye-opening, engaging, and fun. So I think, is this now the time when I get to come forward, or do I wait? This is when I get to come forward. Okay, I'm coming forward. And I should note, this is our first Civic Academy, but hopefully not our last. So keep an eye out for those of you who were not included in this first batch, that look out for the announcements coming up next. All right, so I am going to read the names of each recipient individually up here. I'll present you with your certificate, and then we'll ask that you please stay up at the front. Just come to the side, because then we'll take a group photo, if you're cool with that, like yearbook photos. All right, so I'm going to first call up Bruce Alspa. Next. Jane Church. Lisa Church. We've got Kurt Cunningham. What, not? Oh, yeah, shake to Carlin's too. You need to go over there and do high fives. Yeah, well, I'm reading. Molly Freudel. His idea, that's a great idea. James Gray. Terrence Gruss. Jessica Macy. Steve Magnino. Lynn Malley. Oh, I'm awesome. That's good to hear. Tell your friends. Jonathan McDowell. Jonathan, we'll get his to him. I'm going to come now to Robert McKinney. I need the center. Jack Meisenbach. Kathy Reeby. Tim Scher. Oh, Shear.
Good enough.
Thank you, Tim Shear. Jamie Thornsberry. And Catherine Wortman. Awesome. Well, please join me in clapping for our first round of Citizen Academy. And now,
now they're doing it right in the middle, so it's kind of a lost cause.
First, can you go to the bathroom? Next, CPRB, or not CPRB, commission. Huh?
Where are the council members?
The 5 hours still.
Okay, well, thank you all, and you can stay till the end. So, if you really want to know what it's like. All right, so next up, we have appointments to boards and commissions. And I'm going to go through in the order that we have them. I do have a few notes on a few of them that we have related to appointments for them, and I'll make those at that time. So our first one for the Airport Advisory Board, we have one applicant for each category, and council can make the appointments by voice vote if we want to just appoint Raman Puri in the position of hotel and motel industry, and Rhonda Rollins for the major employer. I know that Matt is abstaining from this one. Is there any objections to that? Any questions?
No.
All right. All those in favor of appointing Raman Puri to the hotel and motel industry and Rhonda Rollins as major employer for Airport Advisory Board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on. For the Building Construction Codes Commission, if agreeable, council can make the one applicant to the one vacancy. So I move that we appoint Jim Dove to the Building Construction Codes Commission in the position of alternate. Do I have or all those in, I don't know.
I don't know.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, for the Climate and Environment Commission, we have 5 vacancies, all with terms to expire November 30th, 2025. For this one, we're gonna have roll call done. So Sheila, will you please start roll for the first of the 5?
Ms. Buffalo,
Linda Godwin.
Ms. Fowler, Ms. Weiner,
Linda Godwin.
Mr. Lovelady,
Linda Godwin.
Mr. Foster,
Linda Godwin.
Mr. Pitzer,
Linda Godwin.
Ms. Peters,
Linda Godwin.
All right, will you please call for the second vacancy?
Ms. Buffalo,
Annette Triplett.
Ms. Weiner,
That triplet.
Mr. Lovelady,
Annette Triplet.
Mr. Foster,
Annette Triplet.
Mr. Pitzer,
Annette Triplet.
Ms. Peters,
Annette Triplet.
And will you call for the third vacancy?
Ms. Buffalo,
David Adams.
Ms. Weiner,
David Adams.
Mr. Lovelady,
I'll go with David Adams. That's
Mr. Foster,
David Adams.
Mr. Pitzer,
David Adams.
Peters,
David Adams.
For the fourth,
Ms. Buffalo,
David Human.
Weiner,
Christian Sass.
Mr. Lovelady,
Raymond Holland.
Foster,
Douglas Hunt.
Mr. Pitzer,
Caitlin Hodges.
Ms. Peters.
David Human.
Okay, we'll have to
Read
do
that
that one
again.
again. And since Ms. Fowler's out, I'll start with Ms. Weiner.
David Human.
Mr. Lovelady,
Raymond Holland.
Mr. Foster,
David Human.
Mr. Pitzer,
Caitlin Hodges.
Peters,
David Human.
Buffalo.
David Human.
David Human received 4 votes. And then finally, for the last vacancy, Ms. Buffalo,
Julie Frejat.
Ms. Weiner,
Caitlin Hodges.
Lovelady,
Raymond Holland.
Mr. Foster,
Raymond Holland.
Mr. Pitzer,
Caitlin Hodges.
Ms. Peters.
Caitlin Hodges.
We'll have to do that one again, and I'll start with Ms. Weiner.
Raymond Holland.
Lovelady,
Raymond Holland.
Mr. Foster,
Raymond Holland.
Raymond Holland.
Peters,
Raymond Holland.
Buffalo.
Let's go with Raymond Holland. Okay. All right, so we've appointed the 5 vacancies for the Climate and Environment Commission. For the Columbia Vision Commission, this is one of our commissions that we have issues meeting quorum and getting enough applicants to it. I spoke with the chair a few months ago and again this morning, and I know that City Council is expecting a report from them in January summarizing their community engagement efforts for our strategic plan. For those of you newer to the Community or to Council, the commission is a carryover from our visioning process in 2008. And a lot has changed since then. So I'm going to suggest we reimagine what the Vision Commission should and could do, if it needs to be decommissioned or if its members need to be on different commissions or boards so that their voice is heard. So I'm going to suggest that we hold off making appointments this evening to the Vision Commission and not re-advertise those current vacancies. When we receive the report in January, we should have a good idea about the future of that commission. And I did receive confirmation that in their founding language, the current members can continue to serve, even if not reappointed. They have also reapplied for the 2. Is there any objection to going forward with that?
No objection.
Without objection? Okay. So we'll move on. So Sheila, is that good direction?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
So going on, the next one we have is our Commission on Cultural Affairs. The current ordinance says that 4 out of 6 wards need to be represented on this commission, and with the current members and the received applications, we are not meeting that intent. We would not meet that criteria. Therefore, I'm going to suggest that we hold off making appointments to this commission. I know that they're not meeting in December. And I request that we ask staff to return to us with an ordinance at the first meeting possible, preferably in December, so we can vote on it to say removing the commission shall have representation from at least 4 of the 6 city wards and replace it with it is desirable to include members on the commission from all city wards. Any objection to that? Questions? Sheila, does that give good direction?
Okay, not making the appointment, bringing back an ordinance, and I'm not, or am I re-advertising?
So we had 3 vacancies, we got 3 applications, just that we could not appoint all 3 because of the way the ordinance is saying. I was gonna say not to re-advertise. Does anyone want to argue for re-advertising?
I'd like to argue for re-advertising.
You would like to re-advertise?
I think
Okay.
you ought to re-advertise.
Okay, yeah, so re-advertise, but maybe without saying that they have to
Yeah, I'll just re-advertise without restricting,
location.
Boards.
Okay, thank you. No, I like that, thank you.
and then hopefully somebody will apply
Yeah.
if you don't pass that ordinance
Thank
that
you.
comes forward.
Right. Okay, now moving on to appointments again. We're back to these. We're going to go on to our Community Land Trust Organization Board. If agreeable, the council can make the home occupant applicant as voice vote. So I move that we appoint Linda Head, reappoint Linda Head to the Community Land Trust Organization Board as the CLT home occupant. Any objection?
No objection.
All right, without objection, she is appointed in that position. And then we'll do roll call for the CDBG neighborhood rep. Sheila, will you please call roll?
Yes. Ms. Buffalo,
Anthony Stanton,
Ms. Fowler,
Anthony Stanton.
Ms. Weiner,
Anthony Stanton.
Mr. Lovelady,
Anthony Stanton.
Mr. Foster,
Anthony Stanton.
Mr. Pitzer,
Nick Knoth.
Ms. Peters.
Nick Knoth.
Mr. Stanton received 5 votes.
okay? And now Sheila, will you please call the roll for the community business leader?
Ms. Buffalo,
Alex LeBrunery,
Ms. Fowler,
Alex LeBrunery.
Ms. Weiner,
Nick Knoth.
Mr. Lovelady,
Nick Knoth.
Mr. Foster,
Alex LeBrunery.
Mr. Pitzer,
Alex LeBrunery.
Ms. Peters.
Nick Knoth.
Alex LeBrunery received 4 votes.
this would also be the time, Pat, you currently serve as the liaison from council to the Community Land Trust. Do you want to continue doing that, or do you want to ask if somebody else wants to do it?
Well, I'm happy to share that responsibility with another council member, but since all of the current land trust homes and the property that they intend to build on is in the first ward, I absolutely want to remain the liaison. But if someone else would like to also participate, because if the land trust is going to grow, it's going to grow north. Sorry, it's going to grow north. I would be happy to have a fellow council member join us.
Sharing responsibility.
Currently, it says one.
Okay. So any objection to Pat continuing to serve as the liaison to it?
No objection.
Okay, no objection. And then Pat, maybe encouraging attendance for other council involvement, I think is good, or for us to revisit
I
that.
zoom in. I've always zoomed in.
All right, moving on, for the Disabilities Commission, if agreeable, council can appoint the one applicant that we have. So I move that we appoint Sonia any objections to appointing Sonia Johnson to the Disabilities Commission?
No objection.
No objection? All right, we'll appoint Sonia Johnson to the Disabilities Commission. Downtown Leadership Council, similar, we have one vacancy and one opening. Is there any objection to appointing Jonathan Adkins to the Columbia Downtown Leadership Council?
No objection.
No objection? Okay, we'll appoint in Jonathan Adkins to that one. All right, moving on to the Mayor's Council, my council on physical fitness and health. We have 4 vacancies and 7 applications to this. So Sheila, will you please call roll? And we have, let's see, I'm trying to look at, we have a few that are they're due in 23 and a few in 25.
1 in 23 and 3 in 25.
Okay, let's start with the 2025 reappointments.
Ms. Buffalo?
Sasha Pass,
Fowler?
Sasha, pass.
Ms. Weiner?
Sasha, pass.
Mr. Lovelady?
Sasha Pass.
Mr. Foster?
Sasha, pass.
Mr. Pitzer?
Sasha, pass.
Ms. Peters?
Sasha pass.
all right. Sheila, will you read for the second opening for term to end 2025?
Ms. Buffalo?
Elizabeth Harrison?
Ms. Fowler?
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm Elizabeth Harrison.
Ms. Weiner?
Elizabeth Harrison.
Mr. Lovelady?
Elizabeth Harrison.
Mr. Foster?
Elizabeth Harrison.
Mr. Pitzer?
Elizabeth Harrison.
Ms. Peters?
Lance Folk.
All right, going for, I think Elizabeth Harrison?
Yes, she received 6 votes.
All right, will you read the last 2025 vacancy?
Ms. Buffalo?
Julie Calfee?
Fowler?
Lance Folk.
Weiner?
Lance Folk.
Mr. Lovelady?
Julie Caffey.
Mr. Foster?
Julie Calfee.
Mr. Pitzer?
Julie Calfee.
Ms. Peters?
Lance Folk.
Julie Calfee received 4 votes.
All right, and then will you read term to expire in 2023?
Ms. Buffalo?
Terry Clappel?
Fowler?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what we're doing.
There's one
Oh,
term.
they're already, never mind, now I understand it. I got it. There's one opening that expires in 2023. Okay. Lance Folk.
Ms. Weiner?
Lance Folk.
Mr. Lovelady?
Thomas Simons.
Mr. Foster?
Terry Kloppel.
Mr. Pitzer?
Thomas Simons.
Ms. Peters?
Lance Folk.
We'll try that one again. We'll start with Ms. Fowler.
Thomas Simons.
Ms. Weiner?
Thomas Simons.
Mr. Lovelady?
Thomas Simons.
Mr. Foster?
Thomas Simons.
Mr. Pitzer?
Thomas Simons.
Ms. Peters?
Lance Folk.
Ms. Buffalo?
Terry Clappel.
Thomas Simons received 5 votes.
All right, thank you. Okay, for our next one is the Parking Advisory Commission, another commission that struggles with meeting quorum and having applicants to the vacancies. This one we have as a re-advertise, but I would like to note that we had asked the commission to review when we were re-advertising multiple times this year, and they did send out a recommendation to reduce their number of seats from 6 to 4 city appointees. There are also 3 other entities that serve on that. So I'm open to trying to see if that will help with their issues or quorum. Otherwise, we can kind of review again. So I'm going to motion that we ask staff to return with an ordinance at the first meeting possible to be voted on that do change that wording from 6 to 4. And because we currently have 4 serving and are willing to continue to serve. And so that will hopefully help them with their quorum issues. Is there any objection to that request? Do I make a motion for that one, Sheila?
Are you good with that, Nancy, to bring forward an ordinance, or do you want a motion?
Did that work with no objection? Okay, all right. So,
And I'm not advertising this because we're getting rid of the two.
correct, the reduction.
Or there's a possibility we're getting rid of the two, so we'll
Correct.
wait until that decision's
Yeah.
made. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the one where we haven't had a quorum since April, I think, is the last, yeah. Maybe before that. Okay. All right, and then the next one is for the Tax Increment Financing Commission. This is a mayor's appointment with the consent of council. So if there's no objection, I'll appoint Paul Harper to our Tax Increment Financing Commission. Any objection?
No objection.
No objection? All right, and then our last one is the tree board. We have one vacancy, one applicant. So is there any objection to appointing Sloan Scott to the tree board? Any objection?
Objection.
No objection?
No objection.
All right, Sloan Scott is on the tree board. Thank you all. Appreciate that. Once a month, we go through a lot of that. All right, moving on to our regular city council meeting. We have no scheduled public comment today. As a reminder, community members who wish to speak on items not on the city council agenda are able to schedule public comment by noon the Wednesday before the council meeting, and they're given 5 minutes at the beginning of the session. So I'll now move on to public hearing. Sheila, will you please read public hearing 3622 and bill 31822?
Public hearing 3622 is the proposed construction of improvements at Capen Park to include expansion and repair of the parking lot, installation of a center median, bioswale, concrete walkways, parking lot lighting and trail amenities, and replacement of the electric service. Council Bill 31822 is an ordinance determining it is in the public interest to construct improvements at Capen Park to include expansion and repair of the parking lot, installation of a center median bioswale, concrete walkways, parking lot lighting and trail amenities, and replacement of the electric service, approving and adopting plans and specifications, determining a portion of the work shall be done by contract, calling for bids through the purchasing division for a portion of the work, authorizing a portion of the project may be done by city employees, providing for payment for the improvement, authorizing the city manager to obtain, execute, and record all documents necessary for the improvement, providing for compliance with the prevailing wage law and state mandated construction safety training, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. Gabe Huffington, Acting Parks and Recreation Director. Located at 1600 Capen Park Drive, Capen Park is 31.9 acres, located in the 6th Ward. Outside of the scenic aspects of the park and the acreage, there's also a major connection to the Hinkson Creek Trail, the Grindstone Trail, and the Grindstone Nature Area. Our project budget is $518,000, and this was provided by a donation from the Capen Family Trust in 2005. Our project primarily focuses on the expansion of the parking lot. We go from 32 spaces to 55 parking spaces. This will address an aging parking lot that we currently have, but then also help to offset the traffic issues that we have related to an increase in the trail park and our nature area pedestrian traffic. Additionally, along with the parking lot, we'll do some entry road repairs that need to be completed. The parking lot currently has no stormwater controls, so we will add those. New ADA accessible sidewalks, new electric service. We host one event at the park in the winter that we'll need that service for. An information kiosk, water fountain, bike racks, one additional LED parking lot light, and then also rebuild the wall that separates the mulch site from the parking area. This is the plan that we are proposing for the park. The top lot is existing, and then our plan is to add an additional parking lot that goes to the west of that. Along with that, we'll improve our connections to the trail. We'll also improve our connection from the street down through the parking lot to allow for that connection. Additionally, bicycle racks, we'll have a new electrical pedestal located on site, new LED parking lot light, and then our stormwater controls will be between the two parking lots where we'll detain that water. So we'll go from 32 parking spaces to 55 total. This also will help alleviate some of the traffic issues that we have at Grindstone Nature Area. We have a small parking lot there as well, and so they both overflow into the road on many occasions. It's important to note in this project that we do have to use some space that is currently occupied by the mulch site. We met with city utility staff months ago to discuss this. It's approximately 5,200 square feet. The majority of that is actually just kind of area that's been pushed out by traffic that is pulled into the mulch site. We don't anticipate any impact to the compost demonstration site, And then we also have no other impacts to the park. That was something important in terms of the public hearing when we talked to citizens. Parking lot improvements were needed, but no other improvements to the park as is. Public input was held at the park on July 19th of 2022. We also had an online survey from July 15th to August 5th. Our Parks and Recreation Commission endorsed the project at the July 21st Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. We anticipate this project will be done by fall of 2023, and again, using a combination of contract and park labor to complete the project. We are requesting at this time approval of legislation authorizing the capital improvement project at Capen Park, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Just one clarifying question, Gabe. You said 518. Did you mean 118? 118,000 or 518,000?
118,000, excuse me.
Okay, slight difference. Any questions for staff on this before we open up the public hearing? Yes, Pat.
Question. I can't find my copy because I forgot to put everything in a 3-ring binder. I apologize. But there was some language that you were going to use both contracted for labor and I think you call it forced labor. And that's your existing employees, correct?
Correct.
And how do you budget for that when you have an overall budget of $118,000 for the project? Do you charge their time against it, or is that sort of off on the side and we just keep track of whether or not we're over our expected expenditure of human time and money?
So any labor expenses associated with the Parks and Recreation Department is in our operating budget. And so that goes back to our operating budget. So any of the project funds will be used for contract labor or for the materials and supplies. So we will track those hours related to the project, but that gets charged to a different account and not the capital improvement project.
But when you're done, you do know how many staff hours of your internal folks that you have expended on that project?
Correct. For each capital project that we do, we track all hours for full-time and part-time staff.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions from council for staff before I open up? All right. Open up the public hearing. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on 3622, the Capen Park improvements? Seeing none, I will close. I will close the public hearing. All right, any additional council comments?
Looks
Let's see,
good.
this is in your ward.
Looks good.
All right. All right, Sheila, will you please call roll on B 31822?
Council Bill 31822, Ms. Buffalo?
Yes?
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelady?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Peters?
Yes.
All right, moving on to old business. Wait, no, yes, old business. Sheila, will you please read B 31322 and B 31422?
Council Bill 31322 is an ordinance extending the corporate limits of the City of Columbia, Missouri by annexing property located at the terminus of Bristol Lake Parkway and east of Bearfield Road, directing the city clerk to give notice of the annexation, placing the property annexed in District R1 one-family dwelling, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading. Council Bill 31422 is an ordinance approving the preliminary plat of Bristol Ridge Plat Number 2 located at the terminus of Bristol Lake Parkway and east of Bearfield Road, setting forth a condition for approval to have a development agreement executed and delivered to the city to establish public infrastructure obligations, authorizing the city manager to execute a development agreement, directing the city clerk to have the development agreement recorded, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, you do. Good evening. Tim Teddy, Community Development Director. And as indicated in the titles, this is a combination of actions. First of all, annexation. Secondly, upon annexation, zoning to what we call the R1 district, which is one family dwelling zoning or one family resident zoning. And then also by ordinance, approval of a prelim plat for a residential development to be known as Bristol Ridge Plat 2. And then a development agreement. And because there's a development agreement with it, we do approve by, not by resolution as indicated in the slide, but by ordinance. So, sorry, that's an error at the bottom. So this is located off of the dead end of Bristol Lake Parkway, which comes off of Gans Road, just to the west of the Discovery Development and the city's own A. Perry Phillips Park. And it is located adjacent to what's known as Bristol Ridge Plat 1. That's the same developer. So we have Crockett Engineering has made the application on behalf of Fred Overton Development Incorporated for these approvals. You have 53.8 acres in that tract that's shown in diagonal or crosshatching. We did have an annexation hearing on this 2 weeks ago, and that's a requirement of state law that you have a hearing not less than 14 days before you take action on an ordinance annexing property. And so we indicated that there is infrastructure to connect to at this location. It's going to have city water, sewer, and electric. City sewer is available to the site. It'll be extended within the site by the developer. And then there are some off-site road development, namely the extension of Bristol Lake Parkway to the north, and then a connection of that to Phillips Farm Road, which runs east-west, and that'll connect to a city section of that near the new field house. And there's a development agreement that lays out the terms for that. These off-site roadway constructions will be done within 3 years of not this action, but whatever the date is for their first final plat, which is when they actually record the lots for potential sale. The view from the air, oblique aerial or bird's eye view, you can see Phillips Lake there to the east of it. You can see the existing development that's to the south. Some open land to the north. Clear Creek does run along that irregular line that you see on the west or northwest boundary of the tract. And then there's also an intermittent stream along the south of the property. This west side is subject to our floodplain overlay. They're not placing any lots other than a common lot within the designated floodplain. When we say floodplain, we mean an area that has a 1% chance of flooding in any given year. So these lots will be protected from that risk, and we'll be protecting the stream also from degradation through a stream buffer, which is another requirement in our ordinances. So there's stream buffers on Clear Creek on the west of the site, and then also the tributary that's runs along the south side, and those are designated on the plat. Those are basically landscape preservation areas that protect the stream bank from erosion, but they also protect lots from getting too close to streams because they do have that erosive power. And that's just a different view. It shows how the floodplain overlay is actually divided into some subzones. The middle zone is what's called the floodway, and that's an area that simply has to be preserved to move that 1% event downstream without causing a rise. So, and then the flood fringe is that area where there's the 1% risk. Again, it's located at the northern terminus, moving into the prelim plat now. It's 106 lots altogether. 103 of those are for dwellings, and then 3 are common or open space lots. There's going to be access off of Bristol Lake Parkway. What we're calling Phillips Farm is going to be a roadway that's going to come in here. It's going to originate within the park. And so that intersection will be at the northeast corner of the site. You'll notice that some of Bristol Lake Parkway does meander off track, so it's actually within city property there, but it's going to be built by the developer, including the extension of a portion of the site that was, or a portion of the road that was not completed to the site, so it stops short of it. The sidewalk does come all the way to the site, so they'll extend that sidewalk on the west side, and that'll be built as a 30-foot wide street. And then Phillips Farm, east and northeast of the site, that's going to be built with 2 12-foot lanes, 2 bike lanes, a 7-foot strip in the middle, and then there'll be sidewalks along that are done as part of the city project. They're going to dedicate right-of-way at the corner, and that would accommodate a future roundabout. It's not warranted just to have a 2-legged intersection, but if we put in place our planned roadway extension all the way to Bearfield It's anticipated that a roundabout will be needed there for traffic control, so that right-of-way is being set aside in advance. And then the development agreement does address the construction of this, as I mentioned. The curvature in the road was something that the city traffic engineer recommended. When streets are built straight for long distances, they're conducive to speeding, so this will slow down the speed of traffic on the roadway. Also, it makes a more pleasant appearance. And the development agreement does state that the developer will build the improvements within 3 years of that plat, or if they plat ahead of schedule by the 69th platted lot, they will be obligated to build those off-site roadways. So when this went through the Planning and Zoning Commission as a combination of zoning and prelim plat, the commission voted 9-0 to recommend the R1 zoning, and then they recommended also 9-0 to recommend to the plat for Bristol Ridge Plat 2. I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from council to staff? Seeing none, would anybody from the public wish to speak on B 31322 and B 31422?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Tim Crockett, Crockett Engineering Consultants, 1000.
And would you like to request 5 minutes?
I'll be rather brief.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, though. Offices at 1000 West Nifon. Here with me tonight is Fred Overton, the applicant for this proposed development. I believe Mr. Teddy did a pretty good job, a very good job, actually, of the staff report for this project. I would like just to cover just a few items here, just real briefly. I think I don't want to cover anything that he's already gone through. We've done the overview. Of course, you know where the location is. This is an interesting picture. What's shown in green is the current city limits, and then what's in yellow is the proposed site. So anytime we talk about annexations, a lot of times we think about reaching out, going further and further and further out. You can kind of see that what we're annexing is just a pocket of county. It's basically surrounded by city limits already. It already has city water to the site. It has city sewer to the site and electric as well. So the utilities are there, certainly inside the urban service area, and planned for future development. We've already gone through that. CATSO, Mr. Teddy touched on this with regards to Bristol Ridge Parkway and the Phillips Farm Road. That's in the development agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions with that regard. There are several roadway additions. I think that there was a portion that the city did not complete at one point that we're going to pick up and extend in here as well. Connectivity to this site, I think when you look at it, we're extending these roads, obviously to serve the development, but when we look at it long-term, you can kind of see right here, this is the road network that's in place right now. When we're done, the road network will basically extend and connect all the way around Phillips Lake. And so I think that's something that's significant for this development. I believe that's going to add a lot more connectivity to the area, a lot more ways in and out. I believe that emergency services, fire have looked at this and they really appreciate and like the idea of having that connectivity through the site as well. So it's not just going to benefit the development, but it also benefits the parks and all of Columbia. So again, we talked about the utilities. Stormwater, that's always a subject in this area, given that it's in a sensitive area. We're going to develop in full standards with the City of Columbia Stormwater Manual with regards to detention and water quality. We're going to address all of those concerns. As Mr. Teddy indicated, we're not going to have any residential lots in the floodplain. We don't plan on filling the floodplain up for residential purposes, so we're kind of staying out of there. So protecting those areas as kind of shown by this schematic here. And again, I think Mr. Teddy did a good job. If you recall, there had been some discussion with some of the neighbors that were having some concerns with the extension of Bristol Lake Parkway. Councilwoman Peters has facilitated us getting together with those neighbors, and it's my understanding that the developer and the neighbors have come to an agreement to do some cost share on some vegetative screening between their property and the extension of Bristol Lake Parkway. So we're very happy for that. Glad to see both parties get together and appreciate Councilwoman Peters for facilitating that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? No, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Good evening. I'm Weldon D Webb, 4814 Carlisle Court. I'm still getting used to that. There are 4 homes on Carlisle Court that are impacted by the extension of Bristol Parkway that was platted back in 2008, but was to be completed by the city, but that never happened. With the proposed development of Bristol Ridge Plat 2, we realized that the environment was going to be altered. Our view of the trees, flowers, birds, and eagles was going to change. In view of that, we requested the developer and city consider how we might be able to minimize the impact of a major street, lights, construction traffic, community traffic, and most of all, it becoming a cut-through for many people. And I don't know who those people are yet, but they will find it. They always do. We attempted to work with the developer and the city. The conversations with Mr. Overton were productive, but unfortunately, city staff never attended any of those meetings. City staff suggested that the developer and the homeowners work out an agreement, and then the city staff would let us know if they would allow it. We tried that once, and they gave us many reasons why it would not be permitted. Not being a fan of the old game, guess what I want? We decided to forge ahead and invited City Councilperson Peterson to meet with us. Ms. Peters agreed to meet with us. In addition, she scheduled a meeting of the developer, the homeowners, and city staff. All attended except city staff. In that meeting, the homeowners and developers agreed to a working agreement. Due to input from the Bristol Lake HOA, the agreement was modified. Mr. Overton endorsed the new agreement, and there's where we're at. I would like just to publicly thank Ms. Peters for this, all of her assistance on this and several other issues. And I also want to thank Mr. Overton. He's a reasonable person. We started out on opposite sides of an issue, and we finished friends. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? None? Any others? Are there any questions from council? Any council comments or additional questions? Seeing none. All right, Sheila, will you please call roll on B 31322 and B 31422 separately?
Council Bill 31322, Ms. Buffalo?
Yes.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelady?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Peters?
Yes.
Council Bill 31422, Ms. Buffalo?
Yes.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelady?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Peters?
Yes.
All right, Sheila, moving on, will you please read B 32622 and R 19122?
Council Bill 32622 is an ordinance amending the FY 2023 annual budget by appropriating federal asset forfeiture funds for the purchase of the Fusus real-time surveillance software platform for the police department and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading. And Council Bill 19122 is a resolution authorizing an agreement with Fusus LLC for video surveillance software and data collaboration platform services and subscription to the Fusus One real-time crime center for the police department.
Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, I'll give you I know you have the council memo, so I won't go over everything, but I'll give you a brief overview of what this platform does and what it doesn't do, and then take any questions you might have. So Fusus is a platform that allows people to donate video footage from a camera system for public business cameras. This can be done voluntarily, and it can be done at different levels. So from registering a camera to having a function where you can review recorded footage to having live view during an event or having live view. Again, it's all voluntary, and each level of permission set by the donor is voluntary, so you don't have to participate at all. For residential cameras, it's simply a registry system where people register their cameras. The appliance that is needed for businesses to live stream or provide recorded video to us is not provided to residential cameras, and many of those cameras are closed loop systems that wouldn't operate even with the hardware. We have no interest in using residential cameras and accessing them. The way that works is if you're on the registry, you would receive an email or a text message and with a description, a case number telling you what we're looking for during what periods, and ask people to check their cameras. They would be able to check their cameras and either provide us video or not through a secure link in an email. As for the forfeiture, we're asking that it be paid out of a forfeiture account. That is money that's accumulated over the years through both Treasury and Department of Justice equitable sharing, which is an agreement that goes in front of council each year. I don't have the specific cases where that money came from. I just know that they come from Treasury and Department of Justice. And sometimes that's stuff that we seize, and sometimes that's other agencies for cases that we've been involved in. So I won't have specific answers about forfeiture money or where it exactly came from, but I know it is from our involvement with federal investigations with the FBI, the DEA, and the IRS. With that, I can take questions.
Yeah, so I imagine we have council questions for you, and then I know we also have a lot of members from the public that will wish to speak. So I make sure we're asking our questions of staff now, and then make sure to save our kind of just overall statement questions for the end when we have the opportunity after the public have. I'm going to start. I just have one quick clarification. We asked to have examples of policies and standard operating procedures from other communities, of which you all shared. So thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Some of them are obviously changes to those policies, like the City of Atlanta, Newport News, all of those, Pittsburgh. Is your intent eventually for ours to also be as extensive? Because right now the sample one we have is just like kind of a 2-pager with comments at the bottom.
Right. So we are trying to transition into a format where we have policy and procedure. This is for our accreditation with CALEA, which we don't have yet. So the person who is working on our policy and procedure now is working to develop those two things. So what we asked them to do is develop that broader policy, which is what CALEA requires. Those are the shoulds and using that type of broader language. And then drilling down in the procedure to say, you know, as far as like an audit would be an example, we shall do an audit every 30 days, and this is who does it. That's what a procedure would line out. Okay. We need to know the functionality of the system, be trained on it to be able to drill down in those procedures in that way, but we'll make those public also once we've developed them if this were to pass.
Yeah, and I did look at those other cities when they adopted their policy, when they adopted their contract, and the contract was first in those, so it looked like they had done through a similar process. All right, council questions.
I have several. I also have a handout for council. I'm going to give one to the city clerk and then pass it down. If you have extras, I'd like to give them to members of the public. I did some distribution beforehand for folks that I had spoken with prior to this meeting. So this is a timeline, as I understand, for the Fusus software discussion going on in our city. And I have some specific questions. If they're not a question that you want to answer, Chief Jones, then I also know I can ask City Manager Seawood about it. So my first question is, you used the word donate footage, which was interesting in your presentation. So I'm not sure how to process that you're suggesting that the people that connect to the software are donating footage to you, when in fact I think I've seen somewhere else that this registration or the software system would save you the time of having to go out and seize video. Can you help me understand how those things appear to be in conflict?
Yeah, they're not in conflict. So when we discuss donor sites, that is a term that the vendor uses for cameras if they opt into the system. So each camera site is a donor site. That is why I use that language. Again, that is completely voluntary. In our current process, what we do is we walk through and do a canvas for cameras, and then we contact each person or business based on what we see from the street. Sometimes we see those cameras and sometimes we don't. So almost always, I can't think of maybe one or two times where that camera footage, and we seek camera footage in most cases. I can't think of but one or two times, one off the top of my head, where we had to actually seize footage. Most people are very helpful and provide footage to us. But all video that becomes as evidence is seized as evidence, whether it's given to us voluntarily or through a court order.
So you don't currently have an understanding of where cameras are located in the commercial areas throughout our city, not just downtown?
Not a great one, no.
All right,
Okay.
more questions?
So, all right, I have some other questions. So, my understanding is that on March 28th, you had, and some invited guests traveled to Atlanta to see the Fusus software. Can you tell us how Fusus came to your attention? Did you find them or did they find you?
Assistant Chief Richenberger found them.
Can you help us understand how you found them?
I found them on an internet search. I commonly get emails throughout the day from various vendors. This is something I happened upon, brought it to my chief's attention, and that got the ball rolling in February this year.
So if you get, I also, in my industry, get all kinds of offers to sell me services because I'm registered with the federal government. So I assume that you probably have that same dynamic going on. So did I miss the part where you drafted an RFP and put this out to bid to the software vendors in the industry?
No,
Did we not do that?
there was no RFP.
Mr. Seawood, is there a reason why we wouldn't have an RFP for an expenditure of this size and of this complexity?
Yeah, this is a sole source. The type of product that they have is they're the only vendor that does it.
Okay. I don't know that I agree with that, but okay.
True.
Okay, so then I understand, and we have many of the members of the community, it's nice to see you all here to support this, but I did have a timeline, I hope some of you have that, but so I do understand that I found out belatedly that the trip to Atlanta was in March. I did hear about a May meeting because I listened in to part of the downtown CID meetings when they were still doing them by Zoom. But then all of this came to the council's attention when it landed on our consent agenda for the August 1st meeting.
Pat, do you have a question?
I do have a question. Okay. Mr. Seawood, how is it that all of this was going on and we didn't have any conversation with the city council until it appeared on the consent agenda on August 1st?
I mean, that's how we do most of our processes. Staff does their research, they do their investigation, they talk to vendors to get an idea of exactly what they want to present, and then they bring that forward as a presentation to council.
I think I'm trying to process that as well. Chief Jones, when you did your outreach, and I do admire your strategic way in which you went about your outreach, but did you talk to the adult division of the Public Defender's Office to ask them their concerns about implementing the Fusus software system?
I didn't speak to anyone. They did not show up to the meeting that I'm aware of.
Did you speak to anyone in the juvenile division of the Public Defender's Office about the implementation of the Fusus system?
I didn't speak to anyone directly. They were invited to the meeting.
Okay. What about the student chapter of the NAACP that's on campus? Did you speak to anyone there?
The same.
Which is?
They were invited.
They were invited?
Yes,
And how were they invited?
by email.
They got a specific email inviting them?
Yes.
Could you make that email list available? I thought I didn't do as good a job as I thought when I asked for that information. Did you reach out and invite the RMF Bail Fund members to participate?
I asked that everybody on the list you provided me be sent an email and invited to the meetings.
Did you have an opportunity to have conversation with them as you did repeatedly with the downtown business associations?
I've had limited conversations with a member.
A member? Who is that member, please?
Tracy Wilson-Kleekamp.
Okay. Did you reach out to the Board of Directors of the Planned Parenthood local affiliate and talk with them about their potential concerns about the Fusus system?
No.
Did you reach out to the Minority Men's Network Board
Were
and
these
talk
the
with them?
members that you had provided the list to them that he said he had reached out to of the group? Are these, I just want to clarify and make sure that we get time for comment.
I understand, but there's a lot of stakeholders that I'm hearing from now were overlooked. So I just wanted to double check. Did you talk to the board members of the Center Project?
I didn't talk to anybody that I know of directly that didn't identify themselves as that, no.
Did you reach out to what's called CABA, which is the Columbia African American Business Association that's part of READY?
If it was on the list you provided me, I asked that that be done.
Did you talk to Adrian or Kimberly, who are the owners and operators of the Gold Bar?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Did you talk to Arvell Fair, who is the owner and operator of Vibes?
Their business is downtown.
Yeah. So we did send out an email to a list of businesses provided to us by finance to try to hit as many businesses as we could.
Yes, I am aware, and I objected to that, by the way. That's a topic for later in the meeting. Did you reach out to Arvell Fair at Vibes?
No, I did not.
Did any of your officers reach out to Arvell?
I don't know.
Did anybody reach out to Ed Tibbs, who owns the last standing building of the Sharp End, and
I don't
talk with
know.
him about it?
I did not speak with him directly, no.
Did you reach out to the First Ward ambassadors and speak with them about their potential concerns about the software?
Not directly, no.
What about United Community Builders that has an office in the First Ward, or a storefront office in the First Ward? Did you speak with anybody there?
I speak with them regularly, but I didn't speak to them about this.
About Fusus? And then I do have a question, and it's probably more of a question for the downtown CID, but again, when I was listening into the meetings, there was a time when you and Caleb Wright appeared in person at the meeting to talk about the possibility of a security analysis downtown. I wondered if you had continued and assisted in that security analysis that the businesses could do themselves, which was the topic of conversation at that meeting.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you remember accompanying Caleb Wright to a downtown CID meeting?
Yes.
You were both there.
Yes.
I was not. I was listening in. But the topic of the conversation was helping the downtown businesses do a security analysis of their own operations. Does that sound familiar?
I'm not sure about that part. My conversation with him was about doing a standardized training for liquor establishments or night establishments to try to get something more consistent downtown.
And would that have something to do with the security of the business, given that people behave differently under the influence of alcohol?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I have a lot of questions about the software agreement as I read through it for the third time, which I can hold on to for later on in the meeting. When I see Mr., is your name Mr. Howard? Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here, because you're from Atlanta, Georgia, aren't you? You know, but that's where your business is okay. So I submitted a request. I'm looking for the date on it. It was after I had a phone appointment with the city manager, and I asked for a list of the 100-plus businesses that you market that you're in, I'm sorry, it's not businesses, they're municipalities.
That was October 31st, Pat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I can see it now. Okay. On October 31st, I requested through the city manager a list of the 100-plus taxpayer-funded jurisdictions who'd implemented your software. And I still haven't received that. In fact, the response I got was that the lawyers were looking at that. Where are we with that request? I'm looking at the chief and Mr. Seawood.
I'm aware, but it looks like he needs to ask the question. So
Okay, we can hold on to that.
we'll
and I
have
can
you
ask
probably
it.
come up and talk
Sure.
when it comes that time. Thank you. I was going to say wait until it's time for the public and have him come up to direct that question.
Okay, and I do have a question for Mr. Seawood. I know that you and Chief Jones and perhaps some other people traveled to some other cities on November 3rd and 4th.
That was just Chief Jones and myself.
Okay, and where did you go?
We went to Oak Lawn, Illinois, Newport News, Virginia, and Gary, Indiana.
And that following Monday, when you and I talked about it and I asked you what you learned, you told me that those cities implemented the Fusus software differently than our intention. Can you tell me what you described that for me? I wondered if you could describe that for all of us.
Sure, those, well, and I think what you look at when you look at the implementation of the system, different cities do it differently. So what those cities did, they actually had a crime scene, they stood up a actual investigation center. So that's where they're actually doing constant review of camera systems and looking at the cameras as they're in operations. That's not what we're looking to do. One of the things that I did learn from those meetings that I thought was that part of the reason why I wanted to go is I wanted to hear from other voices than law enforcement. So in Gary, Indiana, I met with a woman who was in the mayor's office, and she was actually excited about this product, and she was actually proud about what their city was able to implement because it, in her opinion, it took away some of the subjectivity and made it more germane to a video that actually shows the incident that was occurring. When we were in Newport News, met with a woman who's a psychologist, and she was part of the Black Ministerial Alliance. And she was also really excited about the product and excited at what they were able to do in Newport News because it took away some of the disparity that she saw that was going on in her community. And so, I'm glad I went on that trip. It was a long 2 days, visiting 3 cities in 2 days. But the benefit from it was that I was able to hear from other voices about exactly how that product's working in their community.
So, Mr. Seawood, I know I asked this of the chief, and I won't repeat the whole list, but if you wanted to hear from other voices besides law enforcement, we have quite a few stakeholders here in Columbia. Have you had an opportunity to engage in conversation with them about their concerns about the Fusus software system?
I talked to members of the NAACP about the product. I have not met with a large stakeholder group, no.
And is there a reason why that couldn't be built into the timeline of bringing this forward, given that it was out there in the business community since April, and then council got their first opportunity to learn about it in October? Was there a reason why we could not slow down the timeline for both you and the chief and other members of city staff to speak with those stakeholders to hear those other voices rather than law enforcement?
Well, so in that process, we've had several community meetings where we've invited community members to come out and speak and discuss the product with us. And so those have occurred.
Can I ask if anyone else on council has questions of staff, Pat?
I can hold on to my questions. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity.
All right.
Thanks.
Anyone else on council have questions for staff? Andrea?
Chief Jones, you spoke to the mule skinners earlier this week or the end of last week, and you talked about assistance in purchasing cameras. Can you, for businesses, can you speak more to that? I don't know that I understood.
Assistance and
That you were going to buy extras or?
cores. The
Okay.
core appliance is not a camera.
Okay.
Looks kind of like a modem. We're getting a set number of the smaller cores, not the ones that we would use for the city cameras, but we want to be able to give cores to people that can't afford them, and then businesses that are better able to afford them, we would ask them to pay for their own.
What is the difference in the levels of cores?
There is
2 or 3 of them?
or 4 maybe.
Okay.
Jack would be able to speak better to that.
Okay, great.
There's one that takes about 4 cameras. There's one that takes about 26 cameras. All that is dependent on the resolution of the camera and some other things. And then there's some cores that we would get for the city cameras that would take on like 60 or 70 cameras each.
Okay. And Mr. Howard, when you talk to us, will you tell us about the cost for those 2? Thank you.
Yep. Roy, do you have any questions? No. Okay. Nick?
I have several. I just want to confirm some things already, Chief, that I feel like I do know, but I want to be sure about some of these things. As I understand it, the platform will only be deployed and used in the case of an event, a warranted event, and that when that happens, the deployment will require approval by command staff. Is that right?
Not exactly. So, and we can adjust this, but what we envision for controls is having, if it's an active event, you know, an active shooting would be an example, officers would have access to that because it's occurring. If they show up to a business and take a report over the phone and the business says we had a vandalism at a gas station, perhaps, having access to the pre-recorded video in that instance, we would want them to document that they access pre-recorded video. It's when we have things like concerts downtown or trying to manage traffic and if there's some kind of disaster or some event, we would want officers to have access to that. But if it were something like a business that says, I keep getting my automotive shop broken into, which we've had, we want you to do surveillance on my business if you have time. If we were to do a special operation, which we have done in the past, and used physical surveillance, the supervisor could authorize viewing a live camera in that instance. But just accessing live view cameras, we would prohibit through our policy and procedure for general surveillance. We're not here to just surveil people. And that's...
Please refrain from commenting. Thank you.
I also understand that this will not mean that we'll have someone sitting at monitors and watching the cameras. There won't be real-time surveillance going on. Is that right?
No, the only time that would happen is if there were some kind of event and we had to stand up a command post. We would do that at the Emergency Operations Center, and then we would bring up cameras for an event.
I understand the platform has capability of face recognition, but we will not include that in ours, correct?
It does not have the capability. They did not include the capability as for facial recognition.
I've also heard about what I think is a pretty significant degree of auditing function that is able to be used with this, and that when someone logs into or when someone accesses the platform, they're identified as having done that, and there are audits that can be done. How often do you imagine that information would be reviewed, and by whom?
At least monthly by a supervisor or a command level person. There's something that Mr. Seawood and I saw that takes it a step beyond that I appreciate about the system that I didn't know about it until we made that trip. And that is, if the system is up and a supervisor is looking at the system, like just looking at the map but not a camera, just because you have the system up doesn't mean you're viewing a camera. You have to click on the camera to bring it up if you have permission. But when that system is up, a supervisor can see everyone who is logged in. It can see when they logged in, the IP address from which they logged in. I appreciated that portion because a supervisor could see that real time.
And I know we've talked a lot about downtown with this, but the system will be used, could be used, and will be used anywhere where a business owner would choose to be a part of that, right?
Correct.
And I know that you've reached out to other businesses in the community to ask, to inform them about that. Do you have any other plans for reaching out to them to ask about their interest in participating? And we did talk already about the expenses that would be required of someone to be involved, to participate.
Right. So, two parts to your question. There have to be additional outreach, educate people on what they can do with it if they choose to participate. Get people signed up for a registry if they choose to participate, which is an important function of this, or to sign up so that we can send out those SMS text notifications during the event of some major event. I'm sorry, what was the second part of that? Oh, cost. In the contract, there are 1,500 camera connections included with the contract. We can give those to people so that they're not having to pay for that stream. When we last talked to IT, there was around 700 cameras in the city, in buildings and things like that. We wouldn't want, I would doubt that we would even use half of those cameras on Fusus. So the rest of those streams could be allocated to other people so that they weren't paying for those streams.
And just one more question, will the platform be used for surveillance during large events such as festivals taking downtown or when large groups of people are gathered otherwise?
It depends on if it was warranted or not. I mean, if there's good crowd movement and good traffic control and no issues, I wouldn't see a need to bring it up. But if we had traffic problems and those types of things and needed to move crowds of people, we would look at that to see where to put resources. I could envision us doing that with supervisor approval.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. So beyond the businesses that we've talked about, I mean, other entities or groups could participate in the program as well. I'm thinking of, for instance, the school system.
Yes.
And so, for example, if there were an active event at one of our schools, this could be a resource if they chose to participate that might help you respond to that situation.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we're very interested in, because right now we're trained to go to the sound of gunfire. It is not lost on us that each round that goes off is, a teacher or a student. So having access to a camera where we can see people running, for instance, would give us a location to go.
Please get a drink of water. Thank you.
Would give us a location to go in a school. Secondarily, there's a function where you can set a panic alert for places like schools that will geolocate the person in the school that's sending off the alert and then activate a camera in their vicinity so that we could have a quicker response.
And then help me understand the number of supervisors that would have the authority to authorize use of the system. Is it who's ever in charge at any particular time on shift? Is it multiple patrol supervisors?
So we have 4 sergeants on at any given time on patrol, and then a lieutenant that's on as the shift commander, and then assistant chiefs that work during the day mainly. But during an event, you would have any combination of those ranks there. That would be something that we would really have to drill down with our procedures so that those accesses would be granted based on the supervisory level.
Okay, thanks.
Betsy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, not too many because everybody else has asked them. My only question is whether, it looks like you're planning to audit this every month, or at least look at what you've done every month. Is there a way, and maybe this is more for Mr. Seawood, to get an audit or a report to the city council every 6 months as to exactly how this is used so that we can be assured that this is still being used as it's described and it's not being abused?
So we would have to look at how to gather that information. One of the things that the system does is, if I remember correctly, and Mr. Howard can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it'll export the audit history, but we can also send the audit history from the supervisors will do a separate audit of the audit history, spot checking, taking a sample of those and making sure that they were related to a police event. And obviously, if there's any complaint related to it, we would investigate that. The only way I see right now in tracking whether Fusus was used is through our CAD system as a disposition code, just to show whether or not Fusus was used on a call, if that makes sense. In addition to the audits that are there in our own record system, we would do a secondary field that would show in our computer-aided dispatch if Fusus was used during that call to aid us in that audit function. As we look for a new RMS vendor, that is something that we can look to try to incorporate into this.
But before we, as we're in the process of looking for a vendor, we can acknowledge the use that was the amount of times that Fusus was utilized and be able to provide a report on how much it was utilized within a period of time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Betsy? No. Okay, open up. Would anybody from the public wish to speak? Can I ask first, we had some questions for, I forgot your name? Howard. Mr. Howard. Would you mind coming up just to answer a few questions? I appreciate that.
So I think the first question you had asked about the list.
Please introduce
Yes.
yourself.
Oh, good evening, and thank you again for having me back. My name's Jack Howard, Public Safety Advisor with Fusus. So I've been here, I think this is my 6th visit, been to all the different meetings, so again, really happy to be here. So regarding your questions, I can answer yours first. You had asked about a list. I did forward an email, I believe, to the city around November 7th. So it is still with our legal, and basically, us as a company, we try to adhere to our policies and procedures as best as possible with our contracted agencies. We don't have the explicit authority to divulge the identities of everyone that with our customers just based on the contracts, the terms and conditions. However, I just did a brief search on my way over here today. On our front page of our webpage, if you scroll all the way down to the main page, I counted no less than 25 agencies that I jotted down, including some of the ones that have already been mentioned, including some of the ones we've brought up at the interested parties meeting, the meetings with the police department, Downtown Leadership Council, Downtown CID, the policy meeting. So it's all there, but as far as that, again, we're trying to adhere the best we can to the terms and conditions for our contracted agencies. So did that answer your question about agencies?
It helps. Well, I am concerned that you advertise as being in over 100 municipalities and then you don't disclose who they are. So that just concerned me. I also was concerned that our city manager and our police chief traveled to cities that are using the software as an open feed. Do you have the names for us of cities that are using the software in the limited way in which Chief Jones just described?
I'm sorry, what was the first part? You said something about an open feed.
So I understood it when I spoke to Mr. Seawood that he traveled to 3 cities that have, what do you call them, an investigations room or a command center? I can't hear you.
A crime center.
A crime center, okay. So, and I'm missing my little box tonight that helps me hear in my bad ear, so I'm trying to read lips at the same time. So our city manager and our police chief traveled to 3 cities who are using it with a command center or a crime center so that they have the software feeds open and they're looking at them on monitors. That's how he described it to me.
So I can clarify that I was with the visit to 2 of the 3 agencies. So number one, the first agency, Oak Lawn, does not have a command center. I could say that 100%. They are utilizing it, I would see, similar to what Columbia would be, in that as they respond to crimes in progress, then they pull up the access. The other 2, Gary, Indiana, and Newport News, do have personnel. They do have, Gary, Indiana had a huge problem with shootings. The mayor requested that Fusus come out, and they identified 2 central locations that were huge drivers of violence, and it happened to be gas stations. So the gas stations got on board and said, we need your help. And the police says, how can we help you? And the police department partnered with those businesses, kind of similar, and they do have personnel that will monitor the calls for service. And that's where we kind of separate ourselves from others, in that as the police officers are responding to a 911 call for service, they have the ability to pull up that feed. Gary, Indiana, and Newport News took it a step further. They did dedicate personnel. I'm not sure how big the Newport News was, but there was 1 officer, I think just on the day shift for Gary, Indiana, monitoring that. So that's, hope that explains that. When you said open feeds, I just want to clear up this notion. There is no room that has constant feeds coming. There's no way you could do that. Number one, because you only have 1 person. So say you have 400 or 500 cameras, you can't have 5 armed cameras open at one time. It would be ineffective, and there'd be no purpose for it.
Did I hear you just say that you assisted a city in trying to determine where their gun violence was?
No, Gary, Indiana told us where their gun violence was.
They did that analysis, so.
Yeah,
so-
they had they literally had a huge shooting at high school graduation right in the Railcat Stadium. And I think that was the tipping point, that shooting after shooting after shooting, the residents were saying, we need help. And that's when the mayor, the chief, and several others reached out to Fusus, and that's what we're doing right now in Gary, Indiana.
So when you got first initially, were in discussions with the city, did they share with you data where we have the most gunfire or guns discharged or shootings happening? Was that part of the
Fortunately,
conversation?
I wasn't a part of the Gary, Indiana project.
And I'm talking about in Columbia, when you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did the police chief and the police department share with you their data as to where we have an uptick in discharge of weapons and gunshots and shell casings, and then we have injuries and homicides? Did that include?
No, I didn't receive, all I received was kind of the open source reporting that I've been tracking quite a bit with the shootings and such in Columbia.
And so what's your conclusions from our open source reporting about shootings in Columbia? If you've been tracking that, what's your conclusions?
And Pat, I don't think
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Any other questions related to this software specifically for Mr. Howard? Otherwise, I know we have a line of people.
Somebody
You
else
one
had
other
a question about the pricing, yes.
Yeah. And
So
the
regarding the
different
pricing and the
levels.
different levels, so in general, we have a Fusus Core, smaller one, and that pulls in up to 4 feeds, and that in general is up to $200. One-time cost. And again, if you go, we always point the residents and such to our Connect sites, Connect Orlando, Connect Atlanta. It's all on the webpage. A higher one, kind of the next one up is $600, and that's a Fusus Core Pro, and that holds up to 25 cameras. But again, it depends on how good the cameras are. Like a lot of schools right now are buying very high resolution cameras, so it just depends.
And that's
Just
what,
the-
Chief
just getting
Jones,
it.
you were talking about buying extras of that.
So we have, in the contract, there's 45 of the larger cores. In some discussions, we've talked about trading some of those larger ones for smaller ones because of the price difference, and they're willing to switch those out. Makes no difference to them which ones we have, really. It's the feeds that I think that was what concerned me the most, is that that's an ongoing cost for a feed. And if we're getting 1,500 of those and we can give those out to people, we thought that would be best for smaller businesses.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think that was, oh wait, you had a question?
Yes.
Yes. So with the footage, how long will it be stored?
It depends. So it depends on the core, depends on what you guys do. Everything is customizable. In general, the Fusus Core Lite and the Pro stores just about a day or two, again, depending on the quality. And then past that, it just goes back to the original video management software. So say you have a gas station and they bought a 4-camera system off the shelf at Costco or Sam's Club, and that has 30 days retention. That's totally separate. This is just minimal storage for the police to access it if they're responding to a crime in progress. But it does depend. We do make, we got a request from the city of Atlanta to build a bigger core, just because they would prefer gaining the access through the cloud-based system. But in general, it's a couple days. And then if no one, and just to add to that, if no one accesses it and there's no calls for service, it just falls off the edge.
Okay. And who can delete the video footage? Okay, so once it's been accessed, like, can someone go in and delete it and say, like, it hasn't been accessed?
So we're not, all we're doing is connecting, again, permission-based, we're connecting to the system. We don't touch that system. Everything's done through the core on the edge.
Okay, the reason
So you
that
can't, Go ahead.
The reason that I asked that question is because when I was speaking to the Atlanta representative, they said that theirs holds it for 30 days and it could not be deleted. And so it's getting mixed messages of being able to be deleted, or it only stays for a day to 3, and then some 30 days. So it's mixed messaging from like how long it could be stored, and could it or could it not be deleted?
So just when I answered the other question, there are different cores. That's the situation I was explaining. So some cores have, in general, a day to 2 storage. The situation with Atlanta, they said, hey, listen, we would like a larger core with longer storage. That core does store up to 30 days. So it just depends on what core you guys want.
Can I add
What
something?
have we talked about?
Pardon me?
I think we might be talking about two different things, Mr. Lovely. So on the core, there's a storage that's on the owner of the camera side. And then once we access it, once it becomes evidence, that's stored in retention just like we do any evidentiary video. It's the same, they partner with the same company, Axon, that we have with our body-worn cameras. So there's an audit trail in that system also. So I'll give you an example. If we do a sunshine request, for example, and we have to block out faces of juveniles or something like that, the original is always held for the length of whatever that time frame is for the evidence.
Okay, so I think we are kind of talking about the same thing, because when I was speaking with them, I was talking about once accessed, how long is it stored? And it was, on the phone, it was, on the Zoom call, it was 30 days. But I've heard from different entities, different numbers. And then also different ways of it being accessed, from a room to a dashboard and cell phones. All of those 3 ways, the Atlanta officer said that they could access it.
Oh, yes, yeah. So we have a dashboard option. We do have an iOS, Android compatible option. Several agencies are deploying it to the tablets. So when police departments do their active shooter drills at schools, they'll deploy it to a tablet, so then they have that ability. So yes, Atlanta's exactly right. They can access it from their MDTs in the squad cars. They could also access it from a department-issued device, mobile device, Android tablet, such as that.
And once accessed, it could be from 1 day or 30 days.
Yeah, it just depends on what core is attached to that camera system. It's a good question.
What core are we looking at?
I think the question that you're more germane to it is, if we access it, how long are we holding on to it?
Correct.
And so it depends on if it's used for evidence purposes. And so,
No, I get the evidence portion, where if they will hold on to it during the duration of the trial.
Right.
I'm asking just the access portion. Who accessed it? How long do we hold on to that?
So
I understand the difference.
the audit trail is there indefinitely for what camera we accessed and from where.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see a long line of people, and I imagine other people are going to talk as well. So I want to remind y'all to treat one another with respect. You'll be giving 3 minutes to talk. Please respect so that we have opportunity for everybody to speak. If we do have lots of interruptions and disruption, I will call a recess and remind everybody that we will not tolerate that. All right, please come forward and state your name and address so we can make sure we spell it correctly.
Pardon the hat hair. It's still golf season because it's above 40 degrees. I first wanted to say,
Randy, you have to say your name.
Randy Minshew, 2416 Case Point. Mayor Buffalo, you look great sitting there. And I was, by virtue of a mandate, not required to stay here for the entire meeting from a vote back in April. You were asked to stay here, so I will go home and watch Monday Night Football when I'm done. So, I'm standing here in support of the Fusus system and would encourage the City Council to support this. And the reason I believe in it, because I believe Chief Jones believes this would be a great way to add another level of safety to our downtown community, as well as the rest of our city. I happen to office downtown. We own a building downtown. I'm downtown every morning. I'm way too old to be out late at night downtown, but I see what happens during the morning downtown. And probably make a call a week to the downtown officers to help with situations downtown, because 9th and Broadway seems to be a hot spot. The questions I had were, if given access by the owner of the camera or the donor camera to be viewed live, would there be an audit trail? Everything in the system has an audit trail from what I understand. Everyone who has logged into the system can be viewed by the supervisor or anyone who has been logged in. And the audit trail tells you who, when, and how long the IP address was logged in. So if someone brings the dashboard up, whether it's on their phone or on the computer, it's going to tell you, it's going to tell the supervisor. For me, I think what can't get lost in the shuffle is that we have to increase the safety in our city, and this is a way to do it. And so I appreciate the questions. I think they're great questions. There's questions, some questions I hadn't even thought about the system. My encouragement would be that we add this for the safety of Columbia, and I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
All right, so my name is Anthony Welroth, and I own the Basement Reef at 110 North 10th Street. Leading into tonight, the biggest struggle for me has been deciding how to best spend my 3 minutes to highlight the problems with Fusus. Problems would take more than 3 hours to explain in their entirety. In the end, I've decided to focus extensively on what an insult to our community this entire process has been. I've written about many specific concerns regarding Fusus on public Facebook posts and authored a document called Columbia Wants to Build a Bat Cave that I know many of you have read and I distributed here tonight, so I will not be reiterating those points here now. Instead, I want to focus on the extent to which every part of this PR campaign by Jeff Jones, the rest of the CPD, and many of our downtown leaders has shown complete disregard for any respect of the idea of community policing, anyone who has voiced any disagreement, and to be honest, anyone that has dared to question them at all. To be clear, Jeff Jones' response to any scary part of such a powerful surveillance system has either been, "We won't use that part," or "We'll address that in the policy," a policy Jeff Jones has told you all many times that he cannot and will not write until you buy him Fusus. He has also frequently responded that they simply don't have the staff to use all of Fusus's features. That leads to two obvious questions. One, if you can't utilize it, why do you need it? And two, how will the next thing you ask for not just be more police to be able to fully utilize your fancy new AI-powered human tracking and data collecting system? Jeff Jones never wanted to give you any honest answers. Jeff Jones thought if he wined and dined half our business leaders and brought city employees out on expensive trips to see how other cities violate their citizens' privacy, that this would go through without any resistance. Jeff Jones thought that if he came with letters in hand from the local NAACP, the public schools, and business organizations, written with no input from the people they purport to represent, that he wouldn't need to listen to anyone else in the community. Need I remind you that our police department has a community policing resolution? It couldn't be clearer that in the eyes of CPD, CPS, Downtown CID Director Nikki Davis, and many other downtown leaders, that they are the only ones that count as community members. Go ahead. Vote yes on this tonight. Vote yes to fundamentally change the relationship between police and citizens. You can never put that genie back in his bottle, by the way. Go ahead and create an all-seeing class of people that inherently know more about everyone else than anyone else can ever possibly know about them. Go ahead and disregard every voice in this community that has told you this would be a huge misstep and lead to negative and unequal outcomes for many of the most marginalized people among us. If that's community policing in your eyes, go ahead and do that. If that's not what you want, though, vote no and stand with your actual community tonight, please.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Please refrain from clapping, snapping, booing.
See if I can get these glasses on. Brent Gibson, resident of the Second Ward, business owner with property and business in the First Ward. I'm here to talk in support of Fusus. The main thing I've heard tonight, I had a whole list of things to talk about, or to at least try to mention in the 3 minutes, but the main thing I think everyone has missed in this whole picture seems to be these cameras are already in place, they're already recording. We're dealing with public spaces. It's not a privacy issue. It's not surveillance or all these other connotations that bring up fear-mongering and everything like that. We're talking about a system that's going to combine all these cameras to help our police department do a better job of giving back to the community a safer community. And somewhere along the line, I watched this council, and again, sorry for not reading my notes, going after our city manager and our police chief. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out, what is the purpose of the city council? Isn't it to either approve or disapprove these items through our city manager that is in charge of our police chief? Why are we attacking a man in a department that is doing a job of over 100% homicide solve rate in 2022? 100%, folks. That's nothing that you guys talk about, and it's just really irritating. Now give him the resources to take on the rest of the crime, not just homicides. Let's make this place safer and get off of this high horse fear-mongering that we're doing about we're going to invade people's privacy of, get under their Fourth Amendment rights. Hey, this is already public areas. This is not rocket science. These people can go to a court and get an order to get the information if they need it. These are voluntary situations. We're volunteering to put these cameras out so that the police have access to it, our streams or whatever. It's not about going out and we're going to surveil your home residence. And if you're out in the public breaking the law, guess what? You probably ought to get arrested or be looked at on the camera. It's not, this is asinine. And you guys can do better than that, being our elected officials. So I ask you to think about what you're actually supposed to be doing up here and vote and keep this thing going. This is an administration asking you for tools. Give them the tools they need. And that's it. Thanks.
Would you yield to an inquiry, sir?
I'm not going to yield. We have a lot of people that would like to speak at the end if we need, and he'll probably stay around to ask.
I stick a pin in the idea that we have had 9 homicides this year, most of them domestic violence homicides.
Pat,
So
I'm
just-
gonna.
I want to stick a pin in that, make sure we
Public
bring that up.
wish to speak, please come up. And as a reminder, let's try to avoid personal attacks on anybody in the room or not in the room. Hi.
Hello, City Council. My name is Rachel Taylor. I live at 2804 Overhill Road in the 4th Ward. Nick Foster, my man, vote no. I'm here today to demand that the City Council vote no on the draft Fusus proposal.
Come closer to the microphone. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. You can make it shorter. Sorry, thank you.
First, I believe the Fusus is a sneaky way for the CPD to get around the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Our friends pointed out that it's voluntary, but only for business owners. Businesses put up signs that say, there's a video camera here. But with Fusus, how do I know when the police might be looking at me through a business owner's video camera? There's no guarantee of that, and I have no way to consent to the police accessing me. That's a violation of privacy. Police can use the fact that business owners opt in to argue that they have all the permissions that they need. Fusus will not prevent or stop crime. In his interview with Andrew Graybow and KOPN on Wednesday, November 16th, Chief Jeff Jones explained how Fusus would work by proposing a scenario in which a business owner has a Fusus-enrolled camera and someone begins assaulting someone else. The business owner would call 911. The police would arrive. That is not preventing crime. That is, at best, stopping crime. Fusus places Black and POC Columbia citizens at risk of disparate policing. The VSR numbers have not improved. Black people are still 4 times more likely to be pulled over by police. If you think that it's possible for police to use Fusus in an equitable way, you are wrong. And if you choose to execute it, you will be putting people of color and other marginalized people at material risk. Do not do this. In addition, in the current climate in which the state jumped to take away human rights from women and people who give birth, I would like no more police surveillance on my private healthcare decisions than are absolutely necessary. And I'm shocked, Mayor Buffalo, that you would support something that would put women at risk after you ran on such a progressive platform. Accountability is not harm. The Columbia City Council is here to hold themselves accountable, the city manager accountable, and the police accountable, and they should continue to do that. Vote no.
Thank you. Next up for public comment.
Just a sec to pull up my notes. I'm Thomas Maddock, also 2804 Overhill Road. I'm a local faggot, and given that 5 members of my community were just killed in Colorado Springs yesterday, while the police only stopped the man who tackled the shooter, you can imagine I'm somewhat doubtful about the police's claims to protection from violent crime. Real-time video footage, mind you, wouldn't have changed this at all. 911 calls were placed within a minute of the shooter entering the club at 11:55 p.m. Now, the police continue to insist that they will not use facial recognition software, but the human eye and the human brain is capable of facial recognition without any algorithmic assistance. In 2011, the city of London exploded in riots over the police's killing of an unarmed black man. Using the city's 8,000 cameras, Metro Police began combing through footage. Then Prime Minister David Cameron had this to say about the operation. Picture by picture, these criminals are being identified and arrested, and we will not let any phony concerns about human rights get in the way of publication of these pictures and arrest of these individuals. Now, for 10 years, UK Metro Police lied and informed human rights groups that there was no intention of installing facial recognition software, while Parliament passed resolutions condemning the People's Republic of China for using said facial recognition. Of course, in 2016, facial recognition software was installed in cameras across Buckingham, and by 2021, cameras with facial recognition software were widespread across the entire London metropolitan area. Facial recognition software in the first place is a result of police, through their announcements, trying to set the conversation and distract us from the fact that no matter how you slice it, this is a mass surveillance tool concentrated in the hands of one department. They didn't want us to know about it at all. They skirted the normal RFP process and kept counselors out of the loop. This is the actions of a circle of self-interested businesses and police who have conspired to essentially nullify the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in Colombia. This can't by definition prevent crime, because the best case is that they'll have a real-time view as it's happening and respond within normal response times. The police they aren't going to follow procedures because they have repeatedly failed to demonstrate understanding of how this technology works. Is it 2 to 4 levels of Fusus cores? You referred to the merchant constantly for questions. You've said that this couldn't access residential systems, and yet Fusus's website says the Fusus core is capable of accessing any IP camera system, which Google Nest is one, among many, many other brands. If the council votes for this, the citizenry will not let you forget. We will remember that this is the council who sold our right to privacy away in the name of a rundown security theater, which has proven to make no difference in preventing violent crime.
Thank you
we
for
will
your
not
comment.
forget that the police have sat here rolling their eyes at their concerns and that they sought to surveil
Thank you for your
us.
comment. Come up.
My name is Amy Roberts. I'm a Ward 1 resident, and I'm here to ask that council vote not to fund Fusus. The Fourth Amendment in our Constitution states the right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures. Fusus would allow CPD to surveil citizens without having to ask for anyone else's permission, without probable cause and without a warrant. Surveillance without the checks and balances of asking permission or asking for a warrant not only violates that Fourth Amendment, it also leaves room for abuse to go unnoticed and unpunished. To believe every single officer and employee at CPD will always follow the rules is naive and unrealistic. For years, the NSA told us they had never collected data from private phone records. As I'm sure you all remember, Edward Snowden exposed the truth in 2013, proving in fact that they were. I lost my place. You may not remember, though, that in 2020, a federal judge ruled that the FBI and NSA had violated civil liberties with unlawful surveillance. I'm sure a lot of us trusted that our law enforcement was only keeping us safe and assumed that they were of the utmost integrity. If we did, we were wrong. This is why checks and balances are absolutely necessary. The police already have the ability to get video footage if there is a crime or suspicion of a crime. They can ask for footage from camera owners. If the owner refuses to give it to them, they can obtain a warrant. This is the best way, as they must ask permission each time they wish to view footage. It may not be as fast and easy, but are our civil liberties worth sacrificing for efficiency? For me, the answer is no. And there is no evidence that systems like Fusus prevent crime or solve more crimes. The risk of malicious application is greater than the possibility of doing any good for our community.
Thank you. Keep them coming.
My name is Fern Wildflower. I live off Bicknell Street. And I'm here today after working a 13-hour workday with my extreme fear of getting up in front of people because of my concern for the Fusus program. One of our most important rights is our right for privacy, and I take any erosion to that right very seriously because that's something that you often never get back. And I haven't seen anything in the data of the Fusus program that would show that it would be worth any kind of trade in our right for our privacy. In fact, it just seems like there's ways that it can be abused to stalk people and police certain groups of people. I think it's just a slippery slope. It seems like there's different parts of this program that aren't going to be used right now, and it's just a slippery slope. And I feel like just from the questions that were asked and the discrepancies from one person's answer to other people's understanding of the program, just within this evening, doesn't give any kind of trust or confidence in this program.
You guys can move closer.
Okay, hi. My name is Willow Clearwater, and I live off Rock Quarry in Columbia. And I would like to say that I hope you guys vote no on the Fusus. And the reason that I feel that way is although safety is really important to me, and I really appreciate the different law enforcement that has kept us safe, I think this particular thing, when I heard the questions about how it would be used, it sounds kind of like it's up to their discretion on how they want to use it, whether they want to do things that they're telling us now they're not going to do. If they want to change their mind, it doesn't sound like they're going to come back and say, hey, is it okay if we do this now? It just like, now we have this system and we can do it. And to me, that, like has been said before, that's a really slippery slope into targeting certain people, and I just think that at the end of the day, that will not keep us safe. It'll keep us in a place that we don't get to feel safe anymore. So that's all I have to say, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Erica, and I'm in the 2nd Ward. I just had a few comments and questions. They don't have to be answered, but I just want them on record. Mr. Seawood was saying that he only spoke to the NAACP, and I just don't feel that that is a concise, any of the lists that Pat was asking, had we spoken to a concise, because of, I just don't feel that the NAACP represents all of Columbia. So I was just wondering that. And then I wanted to know, where is the data of outcomes of crime and prevention? I mean, I haven't heard any of that, even in reading some of the information. The email sent that Pat mentioned, was there any against? I wanted to know. Then the areas of public input, how was that information provided to the community? Was it just email, knowing that some of these areas where there's a lot of crime, a lot of them don't use email, a lot of them don't use, the social media? Was it, sent out through the mail, through the City of Columbia, mailing? How was that information so that people could be a part of it? And then I wanted to know, how close were the two meetings that I did see to the area of high crime? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Next, public comment.
Hi, my name is Alex August. I live near Hickman High, and I manage Leo's Old Clothes on 9th Street. Every day, 500,000 presumably innocent people are held in local jails prior to conviction. Many are there simply because they cannot afford the bail set for them. But I am not here to discuss the issue of cash bail. I am here to voice my opposition and speak on how implementing the Fusus system in Columbia would result in an increased number of unnecessary arrests, which would subsequently lead to a higher number of individuals with bonds they cannot pay, many of whom have families who rely on them, and no child should have their life turned upside down because a concerned citizen sent a photo of their guardian to the cops for looking suspicious when they were in all likelihood minding their own business. Fusus allows people to report what they feel is suspicious behavior in this manner, and when viewed through a critical and statistical lens that highlights the disparities among the incarcerated population and within the prison industrial complex as a whole, the possibilities are horrifying. The executive director of the district CID once wrote in a budget that people think downtown is now unclean as a direct result of opening the Wabash Warming Center. We no longer have a warming center for our unhoused residents. At 9:36 a.m. today, Nikki Davis sent an email to the business owners of the district lobbying them to support city council members voting yes on the implementation of Fusus to, in my opinion, support an anti-homeless agenda. Not only is this a gross misuse of her power as a community leader, but it is an illegal use of taxpayer dollars which pay her salary. If Nikki Davis and others are so offended by the sight of unhoused individuals in downtown Columbia, I suggest they reconsider their support of Fusus. The unhoused are disproportionately affected by every aspect of the justice system, and rates of arrests and incarceration are in direct correlation with rates of homelessness, even when talking about people who are not yet unhoused. More arrests lead to more incarcerations, which leads to more people on the streets, which leads to more arrests. Recidivism is a problem that implementing an Orwellian system such as this will only serve to perpetuate further. In closing, I would like to address the NAACP's claims that local members of the Black and Brown community have been asked about their stance on Fusus. My networks are widely diverse, and I have not heard a word of support from Fusus from even one person of color. In fact, most know nothing about this because the only POC Ratliff reached out to were those who felt comfortable rubbing shoulders with local law enforcement. And the irony of Ratliff signing her emails, yours in the struggle for equity, freedom, and justice, while she pressures the demographic that is most at risk of enduring police abuse to support their own oppression, is not lost on me. Thank you. Please vote no.
Next up.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sharon Galway Jones, and I have sent an email to all of you with some information about what I'm here to talk about. I am an attorney and an advocate who works on civil and criminal justice issues at the statewide level, and I'm a resident of the 4th Ward. I am here today because I am concerned not about what the chief says he wants to do today, but about the fact that if you pass the ordinances before you, he can change the policies and expand those uses indefinitely. So I would like to propose an alternative. If you vote no, he can find other funding. If you vote yes, he's got carte blanche. However, if we pass what they are doing in so many other communities that have adopted either community safety cameras or the Fusus system, and pass what is called a Community Control Over Police Surveillance, or CCOPS, ordinance, we would be able to put safeguards at an ordinance level over how this data is used, over when and how the police can do live surveillance, over when and how they can access residential cameras, over when and how AI recognition can be used. And those kind of bold 30,000-foot safeguards would allow us to both meet the needs of safety of our community, allow the police to get post-incident camera data, which they can get now with probable cause, more quickly, but not invade our privacy rights or allow for an overabuse of the system. Also, putting it in the ordinance means that any violation would be a violation of law and not merely a police internal policy, and therefore would be more enforceable as a standard. San Francisco has adopted a CCOPS policy. We also know that during the George Floyd protest, the police department did in fact use facial recognition software in a violation of that policy. There is an ongoing lawsuit about that violation. We would be able to have that sort of same recourse if someone did abuse the system if we passed a CCOPS type ordinance. So I would ask that we table this until we can get such an ordinance in place, pass them all together. That way we are assured that the police will use the system in the way they are describing and not abuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Karen Sickinator, Second Ward. I am also a small business owner here in Columbia, and I was notified of this on November 15th. This was the first time that I had really heard about any of this, and as a small business owner, I am somebody who uses artificial intelligence in my everyday business. This is part of what I do for a living. And one of the concerns that has been raised about this system is the fact that it does have the capability for facial recognition. Whether or not we're opting in, opting out, however that looks, the capability is there. So even if we pass this today, saying we are opting out of this, what's to stop our police department from deciding to opt in at a later date? One of the biggest concerns with facial recognition technology is the fact that these algorithms are based upon data that is put into them. And that data that is being put into them is showing that what is coming back out is not very accurate. That's a big problem when we're talking about using this to police our population. We don't necessarily want to wrongfully put people in jail, even temporarily, who are not guilty of anything other than looking kind of similar to what this picture looks like. That's a big problem. What I would like to ask for today is an ordinance that actually bans the use of facial recognition technology by this governing body forever, because we don't have the good data in order to make sure that it's actually accurate. In addition to that, these are laws that are being proposed and being pushed through committee in Congress currently. I would like to read the text from H.R. 3907, which is to prohibit biometric surveillance by the federal government without explicit statutory authorization, and to withhold certain federal public safety grants from state and local governments that engage in biometric surveillance. In addition, they are also working on H.R. 8154 to prohibit the use of facial recognition technology on any image acquired by body-worn cameras of law enforcement officers and for other purposes. I will leave these bills with you. These were proposed in June of 21, so these are current. There have been multiple congressional hearings on this type of software and some of the problems that exist within it. I highly, highly recommend you vote no today. You go back, you watch those congressional hearings in order to get a fuller, bigger understanding of what this thing is before we do something that we can't take back.
Thank you. You want to give those to Sheila? Awesome. Next, public comment.
Good evening. My name is Brian Weimer. I'm the Chief of Police for the University of Missouri-Columbia. I believe Mayor Buffalo and City Council, you probably got a letter from President Choi also in support of the Fusus project. In there, he talked about many things that the City of Columbia and the university has worked for years for the safety of our community. And this is one more thing that we believe in, is making sure that our law enforcement community, along with all of our departments, have the technology and the tools that they need to do their job efficiently. As we've heard many times with this, we're not adding new cameras. They're not adding new cameras. Many times if we go to investigate crimes, I'm sure Chief Jones' team sees the same thing that my team does. A lot of times there may be videos from phones or something like that that may have been gathered. There may be other things where there could be businesses or locations that may perhaps have, captured something. Where this system is not going to add cameras, it's going to be much more efficient to allow them to do their job with the limited staff that we have as law enforcement now. So with that, we'll be able to do better jobs. You see in Idaho right now where there was the students that were killed off campus. Now they're reaching out to their community to say, hey, if you have any type of surveillance that could have helped us with this project, please bring it forward. Where you heard from Fusus, they have a registration system that our community could already register the ring cameras and other things that they may have beyond businesses that could happen out in the community with our apartment complexes and many other things, so that then the police departments don't have to go out and look for these type of things. They can go to that registry, reach out to those individuals, and then get the information that they need to solve the crimes. Recently in the homecoming time, there was one of our students was hit with gunfire downtown. We want to do everything that we can to help get those individuals off the street so it does not happen again. So we work very closely with the City of Columbia Police Department, Boone County Sheriff's Department, Highway Patrol, et cetera, to share information. This will be one way to greatly help that type of thing. So I'm here to strongly support the Fusus project and hope that you vote yes to help them do their job more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Good evening. Jeff Hempstead, 211 Orleans Court. I'm presently Vice President of Columbia Neighborhood Watch. I'm here to back up the letter we sent to the board that our entire board signed. We are in favor of the Fusus system. While they're looking at it as a crime-fighting method to solve crimes, we're looking at it more to prevent crime. Because after going to the two informational meetings, the policy meeting, and talking to the factory rep, I found that individuals can send in video that they have of something suspicious going on. Somebody checking car doors, a group walking down the street, in a unusual manner. This on Nextdoor, you got to do is look at it every day. People are posting videos of something going on in there. Another one today, their car was stolen from in front of their house. They had a ring camera. I doubt whether they posted that to the police. So we are in favor of this. Talking about policy, the police write the policy, but Mr. Seaward has to approve that policy. They can't just implement something and decide that's what we're going to do. So there's checks and balances. Again, we urge you to approve this. Thank you.
Next public comment.
Rebecca Shaw, 2615 Vale Drive. I want to touch on process tonight, which was part, I think, of what Ms. Fowler was trying to describe with this timeline that she put together. I mean, if businesses were approached in April and this item showed up on consent in July, that means there were months in between where the public could have been contacted to ask for opinions or discussion on this topic. The fact that it showed up on consent is an issue, I think, for a lot of people that are in the audience tonight, because that means that the city manager thought that there was no need for discussion. It was a consent item, just broad brush, done, right? We've talked about building trust between your citizenry and this council and the police for the last 3 years when we talk about community policing. This is not a way to build trust by trying to push an item that it looks like there was not a lot of research done on. If we've already had a presentation by another speaker tonight about this alternative, the CCOPS, there are other options. Why are we not able to discuss those? Why is this the only thing brought before us? And one other thing that I'm questioning, because I've heard nothing about, the owner of the camera is the one that gives the consent. What about your lessees and tenants of downtown businesses? What about people who rent or lease apartment buildings? Are they going to be notified that Fusus is active in these buildings? Is that going to be part of a contract with the tenants? Do they have the right to say, no, I don't want the police to access where my business location is? That seems like liability for the city. And one more thing, security. Anytime anything is available online, in the cloud, it's hackable. It just is. We live in this world right now. And I'm going to say that I don't think that our city probably has the highest standard for our data and our storage and our safety and security, because we've all seen major businesses that have had data breaches and leaks. Anything that's out there is available to anyone. So that means any public space where people are at is going to be able to be accessed in some way. And while we're talking about public spaces, let's remember too that there is a certain population in our city that has to be in public spaces. Our unhoused don't have anywhere else to go. They are going to be on film, not with their consent, because they don't have another option.
Next public comment.
Good evening. My name is Missy Cottle, and I own Automotive Specialists in Columbia on Old 63 North in the 3rd Ward. Going to speak a little bit about actually for this, but just sitting here listening to everything, I think the saddest thing for me as a city and citizens is that I feel nobody's perfect. We all have things, but I see CPD, the University of Police Department doing everything they can, and I feel like we're attacking them, and that's sad to me. I think it takes people standing up and having good discussions, but it's like when there's an active shooter in that school, everybody wants to know where they are and how they're taking their role and what you're doing to fix it. But I feel like when we have things like this, it just seems like we continue to bash them instead of work together to try to support them. But with that said, I actually approached CPD over a year ago. I've had such a trouble and problem with crime in my area, and I wanted them to be able to do something. They sat down with me. They were very nice. They took the time. They did what they can. It's limited resources, and I understand that. But it continues to get worse. I've spent over $45,000 in the last 2 years putting a fence around my extra lot to protect the vehicles. I've added lighting. I've updated my cameras. I've done everything that I can to protect the property and my customers' vehicles, yet it continues. This morning, I came in, and now they've cut a hole in the fence. So I dealt with that this morning. They not only just break into the lot, they're stealing, they're breaking windows, they're breaking into vehicles, they're taking things, they're destroying the vehicles on the inside. It just continues to go on and on. I estimate I've spent over $40,000 in the last 2 years out of money out of my own pocket to pay for the damages from the break-ins. They've responded to my business alone over 32 times in less than the last 2 years. And a lot of those were in the middle of the night. I've even gone last week and met them when the alarms go off to go there, to try to meet them there, which I don't know is the smartest thing to do or not, but it's frustrating. They've always tried to respond and they're helpful, but they can only do what they can do, and I feel like we all need to do our own part. I was excited. I'm not saying Fuchsia is the answer. I guess I'm confused. Again, you opt in or you don't. I understand there's privacy. You opt in or you don't, and there's a trail. There's a way to document it. They're not going to run wild with it. As a business owner, I don't know what else we're going to do. I think, and not all business owners, I guess I was a little concerned, Ms. Fowler, that you felt like, but we'll discuss that another day, that small business owners aren't stakeholders in this community. I think we're a huge stakeholder. And so maybe I misunderstood that, because that was concerning to me.
Could have been a misstatement on my part, thank you.
Because that really is scary to me. I think it takes all of us. To me,
Thank
a
you for your
crime is a
comment.
crime.
Thank you. We're at time.
I hope you pass it.
Next public comment.
Thanks for having me. I'm Michael Fields. I own Cracked Up Mobile in downtown Columbia. I'm here in support of Fusus with Chief Jones. I understand there's a lot of concerns. In my industry, we deal with a lot of technology, cell phones, and security camera installations, so we do this all the time. I think I can raise some concerns like facial recognitions. A lot of cameras, even my camera right outside our shop, it actually you can find somebody and track somebody and shine a light as soon as they get into right in front of our shop. And it can say if that is just a piece of paper going by or if that is something with a face on it. So I'm assuming that's what this facial recognition is. It can say that if it's a person versus if it's another item. But it doesn't tell me who exactly that person is. And so what I'm kind of getting at is we have cell phones in our hands. Everybody that's concerned with privacy kind of gave that up once we're all carrying one of these in our hands. I have the right to record something that's going wrong and send it to the cops, send it to my family, be helpful. If Chief Jones asked me if he wants to see our video cameras. And so like many people have said already that this technology is out there. Fusus to me sounds like just a software that is the communicator between devices that are already out there in the public that we already have. How I also see it is that there's a lot of concern in our community, especially in the First Ward, especially in the downtown community where there's a lot of business, a lot of people moving in, a lot of tourists, a lot of students, and this is the heartbeat of our community that controls our economy in Columbia. And I think it's really important to find ways, like I said, maybe Fusus is not the best solution, but it is a solution if Chief Jones has to decide, is he going to hire 10 to 15 to 20 more officers to help patrol the streets that we need to figure out, or can we find something that's sustainable, that is something that is moving along with technology, that allows him to be more proactive or his team to be more proactive rather than reactive of being able to ask permission in advance, not having to do that. And when a crime's in pursuit, it could chase it out of town or chase it in town, see where it's going and where it's coming from after it's been reported. So I see it as like, we already got all this stuff out here. We're already, cameras, privacy, all this is already a thing. Fusus is just the tool that allows the police to proactively ask for permission. I even have the same technology outside of my house too. So if somebody comes outside my house, I can see if it's a person or not. And there's really nothing stopping anybody that already has this technology from sharing this to the police. So
Thank you,
also,
Michael.
I'd like to state a little bit of time. My father couldn't be here. He's the president of Crime Stoppers, and he would like to say that they're also in support of this as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Hi, my name is Deb Rest, and I really hate to say that he just said everything I was going to say. So while I agree and support the idea of Fusus, the idea is the same. You are already being tracked. You have phones, you have computers. Clearly, we're all being watched. Let's just make sure that if we're being watched, it's for a proactive reason. I think that things can be done that way, and I just want us to realize that we all want to be in a safe community. We can do that. I hope we can do that. I think we all want to do that. I'm on the CID, and I feel like anything that we can do to make this a more proactive, wonderful community, let's do it. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Good evening. My name is Rusty Strobman, 4009 Quinton Court, Ward 2. I'm here representing my employer, the Columbia Mall. We obviously utilize our cameras very extensively to provide safety for our guests, our employees, and our vendors. That's our number one focus at my job is our safety of our customers as well as our guests, our employees. So we're already utilizing cameras exclusively throughout the property, inside and out. We are already providing footage to CPD on a regular basis whenever there's a crime committed on our property. So this is something that we're already doing. We see the use of Fusus is being a better use of our resources, both for our staff as well as CPD. One of our biggest fears in the retail environment is an active shooter, just like the public schools. We train constantly for an active shooter. The number one thing in an active shooter is time. It can be for you or against you, and we see Fusus as being for us when it comes to an active shooter. And if CBD has access to our cameras during an active shooter situation, that is going to be so much better than if they didn't. So we are fully supportive of joining the Fusus platform if we're given a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Hey, Nikki Davis with the district, 11 South 10th Street. Very interesting going up after Rusty. All of those things are, what we would be able to do if we were in a closed environment, which we're not. So our board voted to support this back in August. I think we gave you guys a letter of support. We are all about, our mission statement literally is clean beautification, safety, and economic impact, and this fits in perfectly for us. So we are here to support it. I will be here after to answer questions if you need that, but this is something that directly impacts our small businesses on a daily basis. I'm not going to say more so than a mall setting, but this is what impacts our business constantly. So we would love to support this and see this passed.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Brian Yost, Superintendent, Columbia Public Schools. Columbia Public Schools has always enjoyed a great partnership with the Columbia Police Department. The partnership allows for collaboration, sharing of resources to create a safe learning environment for scholars. We regularly work together to ensure the safety of our scholars, families, employees, and community who access and utilize those schools and our campuses on a daily basis. As part of this ongoing relationship, we regularly share information. In a time of crisis, the valuable seconds that would be gained by allowing the Columbia Police Department to access our security cameras could mean the difference between life and death for our students, our employees, and anyone in our building or on our campuses. The district values the importance of keeping our schools safe and secure. This proposed technology would provide an additional layer of support in keeping our schools and our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, would the superintendent of schools yield to an inquiry?
Let's wait. We have a long line of people. Brian, if you wouldn't mind staying around. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and thank you for listening to all the concerns. My name's Matt McCormick. I'm president of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce, located at 300 South Providence. I'm here to speak on behalf of our board of directors, our 1,000 members, and our over 50,000 employees that they represent. Public safety affects every business in Columbia. Low crime rates are consistently reported as a top factor in people's decisions on where to live, shop, and build their businesses. Additionally, crime rates can impact property values, which in turn affects the tax base for our public schools, for our city, and for our community as a whole. According to Neighborhood Scout, which utilizes data from the FBI, in 2021, every 31 citizens in Columbia will experience either a property or violent crime incident each year. Columbia is considered safer than only 13% of the communities in our nation. And according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, nationwide, 56% of retailers with fewer than 500 employees have experienced retail theft in the past year alone. The vast majority of Columbia's retail businesses fall into this category. Retail is not the only sector of businesses that are impacted by increasing theft. Also, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the top business categories are after retail reports increased impact to theft include consulting facilities and agencies, financial services, and insurance businesses, of which we are proud to call home to many of those corporate offices here in Columbia. The Missouri Chamber of Commerce Foundation, an advocacy partner of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce, has made Missouri safety a priority as part of the Missouri's 2030 strategic plan, a priority that we support. Their recommendations are wide and varied, but include things such as address substance misuse and mental healthness, improving training and employment opportunities for incarcerated or formerly incarcerated individuals, reduce recidivism among those on probation or parole. It also includes things like increase and protect tools to support policing and safe communities.
We believe that the Columbia City Council is working to meet the many challenges that come with public safety, and we look forward to working with our law enforcement agencies, community partners, stakeholders, elected officials, and business community to continue building a safer Columbia. We also believe that our businesses should have the ability to keep their workforce, keep their staff, keep their customers safe and secure. We also know that whenever we talk to our businesses throughout the community, the number one issue is workforce. The issue that is right behind that, and I would bet to say it's a 1B, is security and safety. Because when our business community succeeds, our entire community is uplifted. Again, thank you for your time, thank you for your consideration on this topic, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Hello, my name is Michael Tobin. I live at 502 Columbia Drive, and I work downtown. I have worked downtown for 6 or 7 years. I'm there almost every day. When I live my life, I'm living my life downtown. And I've been watching this for months. I have tried to keep my finger on what's going on with this, and repeatedly I've had a hard time seeing when this is going to be on the docket, when this is going to be talked about, and like when we can actually make ourselves heard about this, which I don't appreciate personally. And also today we talked a lot about fear-mongering, but I think that the fear-mongering is what's trying to put this into place in the first place. I don't think it's fear-mongering to want to protect what we have in privacy, in the terms of privacy. I'm 28. I don't necessarily feel represented by like the people that are here because they aren't necessarily the people who are going to have to deal with this going forward for forever. We live here. I'm a part of the downtown community, and I'm going to be affected by this, and people that I know are going to be affected by this. We're worried about students and stray gunfire, and that's a valid concern, but what about the people who live here permanently and are just going to be giving away their right to consent to their likeness for forever? I don't really appreciate that either. And again, preventing crime. How? Reporting suspicious behavior seems more just like tattletaling on people you don't like, and I don't appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Hello, my name is John Ott. I live at 212 Bingham. My family has a company called Ott Historic Rehab, and we've been working in the downtown area for almost 20 years, redeveloping buildings and finding tenants to occupy them and create an atmosphere downtown that people enjoy and feel safe in. Over the 18 years we've been down there, it seems like things have changed, and the feedback we get has changed dramatically. And it's one of those things where starting off with just once we do a project, we're proud of it, we're pleased with it, and then we experience property crime. And property crime takes a lot of time to deal with and funds and so on to deal with. But more importantly, beyond that, when people come to enjoy it, it's the problem is we're getting people that are concerned about their safety. And a lot of the concerns people have expressed tonight about FUSA are possibilities or maybe extreme possibilities, reasonable concerns, whatever. But I do know right now we have issues that are unresolved in the way of the police's ability to deal with safety and crime in this community. We don't have enough police. We don't have enough tools. This is a tool that would potentially help the police, and it's one that just makes a current tool more efficient. We have been asked to provide camera footage in the past, and we're always eager to do it because our tenants want to get whatever it's resolved. Many times it's calls from the tenants calling us first. Hey, what can you do about this? We have there's all kinds of issues that we've dealt with over the years, but we support this. We appreciate this procedure, the way this is being handled in the discussion. But we do think that it's been a good process. We think that we appreciate the job that the city manager and the police chief have done. You can never do enough, and there's just, you can never do enough. But I think they have done a lot. I've read about this in the media over and over. I've attended a meeting, and I just really appreciate that we have a chance to make this a tool that Columbia can use like a lot of other cities, and I think I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Hi, my name is Kate Canterbury. I live at 600 Manor. I don't have a fancy title like a lot of the people that came before me and are coming after me, but I do live in this community. I live 5 minutes from downtown. My kids go to Hickman High School. My husband teaches at the university. I care deeply about the safety of the city, but what makes me angry is that we're not here attacking police. We're not attacking council. We're not attacking the university. We're not attacking Columbia Public Schools. We're simply asking, why are you willing to trade our privacy for the potential to possibly have some small help? These are our privacy, our faces, our lives, what we do every day. I have an Alexa, I have a mobile, but I'm not consenting for that to be given up. And for the businesses and the communities that are supporting this, I can guarantee you, I personally will be sunshining, requesting, if this passes, every single business that gives rights to their cameras to be used by police, because I want to know who is willing to sell me out to the council, to the police, to the city, who is willing to trade my privacy, my children's privacy, the actions that I have every day, because I won't be shopping at your business anymore. I'm a proponent of the district. It's almost exclusively where we go, and I'm horrified that they would choose to sacrifice the potential for the very reality that this is what we are giving up. In addition, I was in a meeting this morning of reproductive justice activists. This is not just a potential. Jefferson City will be coming after people who do aid and abet, people who are trying to access health care, and you will be compelled to give any information that Fusus gathers up. Whether we as a council, whether you as a mayor, whether our police department supports that or not, you will not have a choice. Our state government will compel that footage to be given up in court, for those movements to be tracked. It is established law that the government can compel companies to give that up. So what you are saying is that you are willing to sacrifice people's access to health care, to put them under threat of criminal justice for the chance that this may help. I really hate to see red herrings like school shootings being used by our district. When my children go to Hickman High School, and we could not get any information from the district about a perceived threat last week. People kept their children home from school, yet they want to come to this council and talk about how my children's likeness, how their actions, how the cars that they drive in should be traded in case it may help prevent a school shooting. I guarantee you, this camera system may do a lot of things. It may help with petty crime. It may help with vandalism. It is not going to prevent a school shooting, and I'm not willing to trade my children for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ratliff, and I am the proud president of the Columbia branch of the NAACP, the most loved, the most hated, the most cussed, the most discussed organization in the world, okay? And I wanted to say that I sent an email to all of you on the council. One of you, or some of you, obviously met with people to talk about the NAACP, because how in the world would all of these people know who I am supporting, what I was supporting, except one of you met about that with them. Anyway, to move on from that, I wanted to say that the NAACP is one of the organizations that represent African American people in this community who take their monies to buy memberships into this NAACP. That is the respect that they have for this 111-year-old organization who have represented African-American people in the community for all of those years. I want to say that I work closely with the police department. I work closely with the police department before Chief Jones. I call them anytime there was a problem in our community. I have called them, and I have many of our people in our community will share with you that we resolved many of their complaints because of our relationship and our ability to work with these people. And I wanted to say that I am representing the NAACP, an organization, okay? I am in support, and I hope that you all will be in support. You have a responsibility, as does the police department, as our leaders, to see to it that our citizens are as safe as they can possibly be. You cannot tell me that it should cause anybody any problem when the cameras are already in place, being used, that when we have an opportunity, when the police have an opportunity to be able to use that technology to keep us safe, to help get the suspects off the street. I'm trying to fantasize in my mind how anybody can be opposed to that. I'm really trying to find it to see where they could be opposed to that. But I am absolutely for it, and for suggestions by people. I'm representing an organization.
Oh, yeah, do you want two more? You're representing
Yes,
2 more
ma'am.
minutes, Luca. Sorry.
I support the police department and what they're doing. I also call them when there's a problem and try to help resolve those problems. But I think that you, the council, have as much responsibility as does the police department to see to it that we are as safe as we can be. And this, to me, is a no-brainer. And I hope that you all will vote for this to take place as soon as possible. And I want to say to you that my community that I represent, that they elect me to represent them from every ward in this city, I have memberships, okay? They give me the authority. The national office gives me the authority to be able to speak on their behalf. I have gone and talked to people in the beauty shops. I've talked to people in our churches. I've talked to people all over Columbia. That doesn't mean that I've talked to everybody, because I can't possibly do that. But I have talked to representative groups who feel like this is a very good idea. We want our people to be safe, as safe as they possibly can. And this is one mechanism where go downtown with the hoodie on, 4 black people with a hoodie on, the camera can show us what person, so the police does not have to talk to all 4 of those people about a situation when somebody said that I saw a black person that had a hoodie on and some blue jeans, okay? They got the camera there. And so that's a help to them. So I hope that you all will, without